The state's longest-serving senator calling it a career. The normally camera-shy lawmaker coming to our studio for an exit interview on some of the big moments from his career. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. Neil Breslin, the state senator representing the 46th Senate District, announced this past year he would not seek re-election.
Breslin, who is 81, is the longest-serving tenured member of the state Senate. He has served for 28 years. He was first elected back in 1996. He had not held public office before running for the seat. Since getting elected, he has remained in office, even as the district has changed as part of redistricting. He has outlasted state leadership, working with 6 different governors.
When he was first elected, Bill Clinton had just been elected as president. Gas costs were around $1.23, whereas today it's around $3 according to GasBuddy. The main issues for voters at the time were economic concerns such as income tax reductions and maintaining Medicare.
With Breslin not seeking re-election this year, the race was on for the 46th Senate District, and Assemblywoman Pat Fahey won the seat in the 2024 general election, maintaining Democratic control in the district. Joining us now to give some insight on his historic career, State Senator Neil Breslin. Neil, thanks for coming in.
Delighted to be here.
So how many years were you in this job?
28. So
Wow.
It went by quickly, though.
And what made you want to become a lawmaker?
That's a good question. I never held a public job. I think I was the only one in the Senate who didn't. And I was had my arm twisted to run because they needed people outside of the usual cast that ran because our party was losing a lot of elections. So the appeal to pride always gets to you, and I succumbed and ran.
Now, did you do what a lot of people do in public service, where they do city council, then county ledge, then maybe assembly, then Senate, or did you started right at the top?
I had never held a government job, had never been, as a native Albanian who worked here all my life, as a lawyer, I had never been in the Capitol, and had saw the chamber, Senate chamber, when I was sworn in for the first time.
That's amazing.
Wow.
I think it's better.
And what was it like when you were running for office?
I ran against a very popular opponent who's a dear friend now, and a wonderful government person, Mike Hoblock, who I deeply respect. And it was very stressful because he was very popular, and just things that are external to either one of us, I think, interceded that helped me.
And who was the governor back when you first got in? Was that Mario Cuomo?
No, it was Pataki.
Oh, Pataki,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, we've had some great governors in my time.
Yeah, and do you have a favorite? Not that you're going to get yourself in trouble here, in terms of maybe not just personality, but to negotiate with and get the ball down the field?
You know, Elliot Spitzer was great, and George Pataki was the one I felt most comfortable with. You could relax with him. Andrew Cuomo was somewhat difficult at times.
Right.
And he created that group that kept Democrats out of the majority in the Senate for 7 years.
Right. I want to real quick hit you. One of the only criticisms of the legislature in my 40 years of doing this was that they used to call it the 3 men in the room stuff.
Yep.
Did you see a lot of that where, as a rank and file lawmaker, you were kind of shut out of negotiations, or has that changed over the years?
I think it's gradually changed, and I think it's because we're getting better legislators who say, hey, wait a minute, I'm part of this process, and I know as much as you, so I want to have input. And so I've seen much more participation in recent years, and I think the quality, at least in the Senate, is significantly above where it was.
And what would you say is the biggest change after all these years when it comes to state government?
The biggest change, the lack of relationships that go across the aisle. It used to be that you would go to lunch and dinner with people in the other party and relax with them and treat them the same as you'd want to be treated yourself. And that's kind of, over the years, evaporated.
Much more polarizing?
Much more polarizing.
Is there something you know now that you didn't know when you first got into politics, for lack of a better word?
There's lots of it that I don't know, but I think it's that I used to walk by the Capitol, and I didn't go in there because I never trusted, in my mind, never trusted anyone in there. And I found out there's a lot of legislators who are doing it for the right reasons, and they're there to make a difference in their community, one by one, and they don't care about the newspaper tomorrow or being on television. They want to do their job. And those are the ones that I admire the most. And there's an increasing number of them who are there for the right reasons.
What would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
I think I'm the chairman of the Insurance Committee in the Senate, and I was the president of the National Conference of Insurance Legislators. It's to keep the prices of health insurance down, and you do that incrementally. And so over the years, I think I've been involved in maybe 15 pieces of legislation that helped make sure that we didn't increase the price of health insurance beyond where we could have saved it. And we still have a long way to go. So there aren't those monumental bills, but they're bills I'm very proud of.
Do you think that there needs to be more legislation when it comes to insurance companies in the next session that you would like to see?
There always is, and health insurance is a good place to drug when we go into drugstores. The prices are exorbitant, and there's a monopoly that's still there, and there's hidden characters in the distribution of drugs from the manufacturer down to the drugstores, and it's a constant battle to make sure that we protect the consumer. And the only way to protect the consumer is do everything in the light of day. And unfortunately, when you get to monopolies like the three major drug companies, it isn't the light of day. So every day you're trying to make them have a little more light on them.
In the last 10 seconds, the first morning you wake up and you're not State Senator Breslin, what do you do with yourself? You can't go fishing in January, so what are you going to do?
Well, I don't fish. I try to, because it's a battle to stay in shape. I try to work out in the morning, and I'm looking forward to that day because I'm not quite sure how I'll feel. I'm very, I stayed an extra few years because of Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who is by far the best leader I have seen in 28 years, but it might be that I'll sleep an hour extra, John.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Very nice.
All right, Neil Breslin, thank you for coming in and talking to us today.
Thanks for allowing me here.
Thank you so much.
Interest rates impact the cost of borrowing money. That can have an impact on what you're spending. But what exactly goes into the changes of the interest rate? We'll have an explanation coming up from a financial expert when we come back.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. The Federal Reserve cutting its key interest rates this month.
Rates falling 1/4 of a point in the third cut of the year.
Now, the benchmark rate now stands at 4.3%. The Fed started cutting the interest rates earlier this year after raising them to record levels to help control inflation. The Fed says that they expect to reduce rates more slowly next year because of elevated inflation. Now, the last time that the Federal Reserve changed interest rates, it was on the heels of the very high inflation.
Earlier this year, we spoke with an economics professor on the interest rates and the impact they can have on the economy.
This is Professor Arturo Estrella, economics professor with Rensselaer Polytech Institute. Arturo, thanks for coming on. All the way from, where are you? You're on a little holiday, right?
Well, it's not quite a holiday, but it's a very nice place to be.
Got you. Let's talk about interest rates right now. If somebody wanted to buy a book, Interest Rates 101 for Dummies or something, for those who don't really understand, banks don't just willy-nilly set their rates whatever they feel like doing on a Tuesday or a Thursday, right? They turn to the Fed, and explain that a little bit for those who don't understand how interest rates work.
Sure. Yeah. The main influence on the market, apart from expectations and general economic conditions, is the Federal Reserve. And they set one rate, and it looks very innocent because it's just an overnight interbank lending rate. So you might assume that that doesn't affect very much. But actually, when it makes the cost of funds higher for banks, the banks pass that along, and all kinds of credit gets more expensive, including auto loans, mortgages, and then the bond markets get into the act, and they build in expectations, and bond rates get higher also when the Fed raises rates. So it starts very in a very limited basis in the federal funds market, and then it expands to the whole economy.
And for those who've been sort of watching this roller coaster ride from the sidelines, rates were really almost artificially low. It felt like a few years ago when people were getting mortgages for 2 point whatever percent. That was super low, wasn't it?
That's correct. I mean, that was basically historically a historical low. The Federal Reserve kept the rate at basically zero for a couple of years, and that allowed all kinds of borrowing to happen at very low rates across the board.
Now, when you see all that borrowing, I imagine it's almost like gas and a brake in a car. You got to be careful which one you're pushing and how hard, because either stomp on either one too much, and you can cause trouble for yourself. It felt like maybe inflation started going up, and it got away from the Fed a little bit. Is that a fair assessment, or because then they started going up, 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 up?
Right. I think, in my opinion, the high inflation came mostly from the supply side, and the Fed controls or influences the demand side. So during the pandemic, there were the supply chain disruptions. Supply got a lot more expensive, and that was passed on to prices, both retail and wholesale prices. So I think that's what we saw initially. So what the Fed does is it has to determine how much of that is supply, how much of that is demand, because as I said, they affect mainly the demand side. So for a while, prices were kept increasing, basically because of the supply side disruptions. Now, eventually, the Fed started raising rates, and they did it very vigorously. They went up very, very fast. So when that happened, that reined in the demand side, and inflation started coming down, both because the supply side disruptions were ending, or at least diminishing, and the demand side was being reined in by the Fed.
Now, at this point, there's been a lot of people clamoring, saying, you don't want to slip into a recession. You don't want to go too far the other way now, because they certainly raised them up, and it's reined in that inflation. The numbers are getting better. Do they start coming down now, and how quickly do you think, or is it going to be very slow, do you think?
That's very difficult to say right now. The Fed, first, as a preface, let me say that it takes a long time for this process that I described earlier to take hold on the real economy. So it could be 9 months. If the Fed does something today, it could take 9 months for it to hit the real economy, and then for it to affect inflation takes even longer. So you have to take a very long-term perspective when looking at these things. And it's very difficult for the Fed, in part because of these long lags. Now, where to set the rate exactly, it's very difficult. There's no assurance that you raise it 25 basis points and it's going to do something analogous to something like what you want to happen. And it also takes a long time for that to happen. So right now, I would say the Fed will likely lower rates before the end of the year, because there is evidence that some important economic variables, real variables, are being affected right now. So they want to try to make sure that we don't get a recession. That's been their goal for a while. Sorry.
Yeah, last minute or so, or 30 seconds or so, any other indicators you're watching now that give you hope or alarm, either way, about the economy?
Well, there's a couple of interesting indicators based on the unemployment rate or the level of unemployment. These are called the SAM and the Cantro indicators, and they tend to give a signal once the recession has started. Now, the SAM indicator gave a recession signal in July, and the Cantro gave a signal in April. So according to these indicators, and they've done perfectly in the last 8 recessions, according to these indicators, we should already be in a recession. But in fact, we won't be able to tell for a while. The agency, the National Bureau of Economic Research, which is the one that determines whether we're in a recession or not, won't make an assessment probably for several months.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. A fascinating conversation talking to you, Arturo Estrella, a professor emeritus at RPI. Thank you so much for coming on. Giving support to expectant mothers. That's the goal of a new law set to take effect next year. When we come back, we'll hear from those looking to provide safety net for working women who need prenatal care.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN.
Welcome back. With the new year starting this week, a number of key pieces of legislation are about to go into effect.
For example, employers will soon be required to give women paid time off for pregnancy-related doctor's appointments. I spoke with supporters of the law to learn more about the impact it will have. Soon, pregnant employees won't have to worry about missing out on money while receiving prenatal care.
January 1, New York will be the first state in the nation to require employers to provide the time off up to 20 hours during the pregnancy. And this will help over 136,000 pregnant women who now don't have to worry about losing money.
The 20 hours of paid time will be in addition to the paid sick leave employees already have. Dr. Jim Saperstone says those prenatal appointments are important.
Just the stress alone of having to work 5 days a week and be under the gun with your supervisor and deadlines can affect the growth of the fetus, can affect the health of the mom. So if mom knows that she has a safety net where she can go whenever she needs to without any concern about ramifications and get paid for it, it's great for everybody.
The governor says New York employers have been made aware of the policy.
We've been getting the word out through our Department of Labor. They've been in contact with all the employers, and now it's about making sure the employees know. So we're going to have signs on the subway stations and buses and everywhere we can reach people, and I'm asking the media to help get the word out as well, to know your rights.
Preventative health is good for everyone.
Another big story we're looking back at and ahead to, the indictment of New York City Mayor Eric Adams on corruption charges. Adams has remained in office despite the indictment. At the time, we spoke with Pix 11 anchor Dan Manarino on the reactions of lawmakers and New Yorkers.
If you talk to a number of Democratic politicians, right, from the City Council, State Assembly, State Senate, a number of them have already called for resignation of Eric Adams, right, including, of course, the mayoral hopefuls that are waiting in the wings, ready to challenge him if he were to stay in the race come next June for the primary. But then there are a handful of folks who are high-ranking, Tish James being one of them, the Attorney General, right? And she has kind of said she's disturbed by the allegations in this indictment, but has stopped short of calling for resignation. And that is how a lot of folks have been, including House Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, who has also said it is disturbing, but he is holding off on calling for a resignation. So it's really a mixed bag. Now, when you go to the streets and talk to a New Yorker, totally different story as well. You get some, obviously, who are saying he's got to go because these charges are too much for them. And then you have others who are standing by him.
We're also looking back at a guilty verdict of now President-elect Donald Trump. He was found guilty on 34 felony counts that he faced in connection with the hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. At the time, we looked into what this might mean for Trump's presidential bid. Here, a legal expert give his reaction.
The problem is it's not going to be heard until after election. So you're not going to get a resolution. What does that mean? It means everybody on both sides gets a chance to argue and debate the wisdom and the fairness of the trial. And again, to me, that goes back to what I was saying about the destabilizing nature of this. You don't get a resolution before the election. This is a case that might have been better tried like the others 2 years ago, well before the campaign cycle. Putting it at this point, I think, makes it more difficult for everybody involved, both on the legal side and the political side.
Mm-hmm. Stick around, back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Finally, at Empire State Weekly, as the year comes to a close, we're looking ahead to the political outlook next year. Now, coming January 14th, Governor Hochul will give her State of the State address, her fourth since becoming governor. That address is an opportunity for the governor to lay out the priorities that she plans to tackle in the new year.
2025 may be a critical year for the governor as she faces re-election in 2026. Democratic Party leadership may consider replacing Hochul at the top of the ticket in New York if she fails to make progress on key issues with voters, according to reporting from Politico.
We'll be certain to bring you any details from the State of the State, as well as analysis on the important issues in the new year. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you in the new year.
Don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of the show on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.